Picture this. It's 15,000 years ago. You're part of a band of maybe 30 people. You know every single one of them by name, by smell, by the sound of their breathing in the dark. You hunt together, sleep together, defend each other from things that want to kill you. And there are a lot of things that want to kill you. Your entire survival depends on one thing above all else: trust. The person next to you has to show up every time, no exceptions. And then one day, they don't. Maybe they took food from the communal store and hid it. Maybe they tipped off a rival group about where you'd be sleeping. Maybe they abandoned someone during a hunt to save themselves. The specifics don't matter as much as the result. The social fabric, the single most important technology your group possesses, just got a hole torn in it. Now here's the question nobody thinks to ask. What happens next? Because there's no courthouse, there's no sheriff, there's no form to fill out, no lawyer to call, no judge to bang a gavel and declare what justice looks like. There's just you, the betrayer, and 28 other people who are watching very carefully to see how this gets handled. And how it gets handled will determine whether this group survives the next winter. That pressure, the raw existential weight of it, produced something. Not courts, not laws, not anything written down. Something older and, in many ways, far more brutal. A set of mechanisms so deeply wired into human social behavior that we still run them today, mostly without realizing it. Here's what most people get wrong about pre-legal justice. They assume it was chaos, pure revenge, unchecked, random, emotionally driven. And sometimes it was. But more often, the punishment for betrayal before courts existed was not random at all. It was calculated, communal, and designed to solve a very specific problem. How do you protect the group from someone inside the group when the group is all you have? The answers humans came up with over tens of thousands of years are stranger, more sophisticated, and more revealing about our nature than anything you'll find in a law textbook. Some of those answers involved blood. Some involved banishment into wilderness that was basically a slow death sentence. Some involved something quieter, and in certain ways, far worse than either. And all of them are still running, somewhere in the back of your brain, right now. Let's start with the most obvious one: blood. Blood revenge. The idea that a wrong done to one member of a group is a wrong done to the entire group is one of the oldest and most universal human institutions ever documented. Anthropologists have found versions of it on every inhabited continent, in cultures that had zero contact with each other, separated by oceans and millennia. That kind of convergence doesn't happen by accident. It happens when something works. The logic was brutally straightforward. If you betray someone in my family, my clan, my tribe, and nothing happens to you, you just walk away clean, then you've just told everyone watching that betrayal is free, that it costs nothing. And in a world without courts, without police, without any centralized enforcement mechanism, the only way to put a price on betrayal was to collect it yourself, personally, with witnesses. This wasn't just anger, it was communication, a message sent not just to the betrayer, but to every single person who might consider doing the same thing. The violence was the policy. But blood revenge had a catastrophic design flaw. It escalated. Your family punishes mine, so my family punishes yours, so your family comes back harder. The Hatfields and McCoys are a famous American example, but they're barely a footnote compared to the multi-generational blood feuds documented in places like Highland Albania, where the Qanun, a centuries-old oral legal code, tried to formalize revenge precisely because unregulated vengeance was tearing communities apart. The cure for betrayal was killing the group from the inside out. Which is why the second punishment was in many ways more powerful: exile. Banishment sounds almost gentle compared to violence. You just make someone leave. Except in the ancient world, exile wasn't a punishment that replaced death. It was death, delivered slowly and with plausible deniability. A single human being alone in the wilderness, no shelter network, no hunting partners, no one to watch your back at night, had a life expectancy measured in days to weeks depending on the season. Exile was the group's way of killing you without having to touch you, and it carried an extra layer of cruelty that pure violence didn't. It erased you socially before it erased you physically. Your name stopped being spoken. Your contributions got quietly unattributed. You became, in the group's shared memory, someone who had never quite existed. The ancient Greeks had a word for this state: atimia, a stripping of honor so complete it preceded and in some ways exceeded physical death. Before any court ever convened, humans had already invented two of the most sophisticated punishments imaginable. One that made an example, and one that made you disappear. Here's where it gets interesting. Blood revenge and exile were powerful tools, but they both had the same fundamental problem. They were reactive. Something bad happened, and then you dealt with it. What early human communities actually needed was something more sophisticated. A system that didn't just punish betrayal after the fact, but managed it, contained it, and sent a message before the next betrayal happened. What they built, without blueprints, without legislation, without anyone sitting down and designing it, was collective judgment. The group itself became the court. Not one person, not a chief or an elder acting alone, but the community as a whole, operating through a process that looked informal, but was anything but. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies that survived into the modern era, the Kung of the Kalahari, the Hadza of Tanzania, Aboriginal Australians, found strikingly similar patterns across all of them. When a serious transgression occurred, the group would gather. Not to vote exactly, but to talk. For hours, sometimes days, everyone got to speak. Grievances got aired. The betrayer got to respond. And slowly, through a process that looked like argument but functioned like deliberation, consensus formed. And that consensus carried absolute weight. Because there was no appeal. There was no higher authority. The group's decision was the only decision that existed. What's remarkable about this system is how psychologically sophisticated it was. Modern behavioral research has confirmed what these communities figured out empirically. Public accountability changes behavior in ways that private punishment simply doesn't. When your transgression is named out loud in front of every person whose opinion of you shapes your daily survival, the social cost becomes almost physically unbearable. Shame isn't just an emotion. In a small, tight-knit group, it's a form of slow, structural violence against your place in the community. But here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. This system had no guardrails. There was no presumption of innocence. There was no standard of evidence. There was no protection against the group simply being wrong, or being manipulated by whoever was most persuasive, or punishing someone not for actual betrayal, but for being inconvenient, different, or threatening to the wrong person's status. The same collective mechanism that protected communities from genuine traitors was equally capable of destroying innocent people. And it did, regularly. The group was the judge. The group was the jury. The group was the executioner. And the group, like every court that came after it, was not always right. Now here's the part nobody expects. Some betrayers survived. Not just survived, thrived. Walked away from what should have been a death sentence, social erasure, or collective condemnation, and somehow landed on their feet. And understanding how they did it tells you more about human nature than all the punishment mechanisms combined. The first way was the simplest and the oldest: status. In virtually every documented pre-legal society, the rules did not apply equally. They never have, and they never did. A high-status individual who betrayed someone lower on the social hierarchy faced a fundamentally different calculus than a low-status individual who did the same thing in reverse. The group's collective judgment, for all its apparent egalitarianism, was quietly and consistently distorted by power. The person who controlled access to resources, who led hunts, who had the most allies, who was the most physically formidable, that person operated inside a different version of the justice system than everyone else. Not because the rules said so, because the rules were enforced by humans, and humans have always been susceptible to the gravitational pull of power. This is not cynicism. This is archaeology, anthropology, and about 10,000 years of recorded history all saying the same thing simultaneously. The second way was relocation. If the group that witnessed your betrayal became too dangerous to stay near, you left. You found another group, and crucially, you arrived there as a stranger, which meant you arrived there without a reputation. In a world without writing, without communication networks, without any way for your old community's judgment to follow you across a mountain range or a river. A new group was a clean slate. The betrayer who was fast enough, resourceful enough, and socially skilled enough to integrate someone new could effectively outrun their own history. This created something fascinating and troubling in equal measure. It meant that the people most likely to successfully escape punishment for betrayal were also the people with the highest social intelligence, the ones who could read a room, build trust quickly, present themselves convincingly to strangers. In other words, the ones most capable of betraying again. The third way was the most psychologically complex: confession and transformation. In many pre-legal communities, a betrayer who publicly acknowledged what they had done, fully, specifically, without deflection, triggered a completely different social response than one who denied or minimized. The confession itself functioned as a partial payment of the debt. It handed power back to the community. It said, "Your judgment is legitimate. I submit to it." And sometimes, remarkably, that was enough. Not always, not even usually, but enough times that it became a recognized path, a way back in. Which means that before courts existed, humans had already discovered something that every legal system since has had to grapple with: that justice and punishment are not the same thing, and that what communities often want, more than blood or banishment, is acknowledgement. The simple, devastating admission that what happened was real, that it mattered, and that the person who caused it knows it. That instinct didn't go away when courts were invented. It just got formalized. Plea deals, restorative justice programs, victim impact statements, all of it is the same ancient negotiation wearing a suit. Here's what's strange about all of this. Courts were invented roughly 4,000 years ago. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest written legal systems we have, dates to around 1754 BC. The Roman legal tradition, which forms the backbone of most Western law today, came later. These systems are genuinely extraordinary achievements of human civilization. They introduced standards of evidence, rights of the accused, proportional sentencing, and the radical idea that punishment should come from the state rather than from the injured party personally. But they didn't replace the older system. They layered on top of it. Because the older system is not a system, it's biology. The rage you feel when someone close to you betrays your trust, that is not a cultural artifact. That is evolution. That is hundreds of thousands of years of natural selection ruthlessly favoring individuals whose brains treated betrayal as an existential threat. Because in the environment where those brains were built, it was. The people who shrugged off betrayal didn't build the coalitions that survived. The people who responded to it with fierce, memorable intensity did. You are descended from the ones who took it personally. Which means that every modern institution we've built to handle betrayal, courts, contracts, HR departments, terms of service agreements, exists not to eliminate that ancient response, but to contain it, to route it somewhere that doesn't destroy the social fabric in the process of trying to protect it. The judge banging the gavel is, at a deep structural level, doing the same thing the elder in a hunter-gatherer circle was doing 20,000 years ago, creating a shared ritual that converts raw social fury into something the community can survive. And when those institutions fail, or feel like they've failed, watch what happens. Watch what people reach for immediately, automatically, without thinking. Public shaming, exile from social networks, collective condemnation coordinated among groups. The ancient mechanisms come back online instantly, as if they never left, because they never did. The punishment for betrayal before courts existed lives in you right now. It's in the sick feeling when someone breaks your trust. It's in the impulse to tell everyone what they did. It's in the satisfaction, uncomfortable as it is to admit, when a betrayer finally faces consequences in public, with witnesses. Courts didn't civilize that impulse. They just gave it a room to happen in, with rules, so the rest of us could keep going. That's not a small thing. That might be the whole point of civilization.